Hello and welcome to the Justice Factor. Democratic South Africa turns 21 this month and continues to look for ways to grow our economy. In March, government announced that black industrialists would be able to access a 1 billion rand grant from the Department of Trade and Industry as a support measure. Today we speak to well-known entrepreneur, philanthropist, capitalist and now also Democratic Alliance member Herman Mashaba about what we need to do to enthuse our entrepreneurs. We will also get his views about where our democracy is headed. My guest today is the founder of the revolutionary hair care company Black Like Me, Herman Mashaba. Herman Mashaba, welcome to the show. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Let me start by asking you this. It's 21 years since we celebrated the new South Africa. How are we doing as a country? Are you optimistic? Can we be greater than we are at the moment?
In fact, Justice, I'm obviously quite optimistic about the future of the country. But at the same time, I think we should not really be naive to really put our heads in the sense that we're not really facing challenges, because this country is really facing some major challenges. I don't have to really tell you, you can see.
Give me an example of some of those.
The economic performance of our country. I think if you really look at the entire African continent, South Africa is right at the moment, unfortunately, throwing the entire continent back. When the international investors and international community look at Africa's development, South Africa is holding the performance of the economy, growing at just over 1%. Is it acceptable when we sit with one of the highest unemployment rates in the world? In the developing world, with just over 8.5 million of our people unemployed. And so we unfortunately really lack the leadership to inspire our nation to really look forward. Because I think, for me, what is really disturbing about the current situation, what's really putting our country at risk, it's our focus on history instead of really being a future-focused nation. I think when 1994 came under Nelson Mandela's leadership, we were really inspired, and South Africa really became the apple of the world. He really sold a great concept to the nation, to the world, which won the hearts and minds of the world. But we're busy at this point in time redoing, dismantling everything that this great leader really created for us.
Let me challenge you on the point about history. A lot of people will say, look, Herman Mashaba, this is a country that had 46 years of apartheid rule. It had, more than 300 years of colonialism. How can you come and tell us that, no, we can't focus on the past when it's the past that is holding us back?
Absolutely. How can the past hold us back, Justice? I think all of us have got an intellect to really be able to really focus. We owe it to our children, we owe it to their children to ensure that we create a future for them. We're aware about what happened to us the last 300 years or so, but then can we really change it? There's absolutely no way of ever changing that. We can obviously rail from that, but I think we really need the leadership that can really inspire us to actually look up at the future, because history is history. It has happened. Actually, I think for me, I'm really getting even more concerned with the lately concern about the removal of statues, when we should really be saying, you know what, from a historical point of view, how can we take advantage from an economic point of view of this history? Because it's a bad history that we went through. This is the kind of history we should really be packaging to sell to the international community from a visitor's point of view. We need foreign visitors in our country. And history, it's really one of the products any nation can obviously sell. And I think really looking at that history for us to really sell to the world would really be a great asset. But we're destroying this. So I think for me, it doesn't really make sense. What is it that we're actually trying to really do as a nation?
Well, aren't you in trouble? Aren't you in danger of being accused of ignoring what's holding many black people back? People would say, oh, but Herman Mashaba, you did fantastic things with Black Like Me, the company that you founded and that has done so brilliantly over the decades. people will say, but you're an exception. Many other people will not be able to break through.
It is for that reason that we've got to start to really not have exceptions. Let us really create entrepreneurship. And obviously creation of entrepreneurship is not something that has to really be driven by the government. The government has to just really create an enabling environment for all of us as South Africans to really be able to operate within. As you're aware, I started my business in the height of apartheid with P.W. Botha, who said to me, Herman, you cannot really go into business as a black South African. And I decided to ignore such legislative framework. But obviously, those days are gone. We are now in a new democratic South Africa. Opportunities have got to really be open to all of us. I think one of the biggest mistakes for me that I think we're making as South Africa right now is to pursue all this race-based legislative framework. Because for as long as we believe 21 years down the line that we're going to pursue the division of our country along racial lines, I can assure you, and I'm not an economist, though, and not a magician, but one thing for sure, as long as we continue running our country along racial lines, there's just no chance that this country will ever prosper. Because we defeated apartheid to normalize our society. Now I see acceleration of us being divided again along racial line. Is this good for the future of our country? Honestly, it doesn't really augur well for the future. We should really be having the leadership that can inspire us and really encourage us to really be one united nations. Spend, when the economy is growing, spend money on the education of our people. Spend money on development of previously disadvantaged areas. So unlike not allow business to really operate normally like any other countries in the world.
Let me ask you about a program that President Zuma launched in March. It's the Black Industrialist program, in which government says they want to create people like you, and they want to create as many as possible. Well, the target is 100 black industrialists. Government has also put aside some money into the program. There's a new fund that will, people will be able to access and so forth. Do you think this is the right way to go, though? That's a bit of what you're talking about, government helping, but
I think, for me, a few months ago when this whole issue came into the public domain, one of the newspapers asked me to really write my views on this. And I think it really came out quite strong that has our government all of a sudden become, they become magicians, where they can just really decide, to really produce entrepreneurs. I believe, personally, I believe a system like this stands absolutely no chance because we've got, what, 52 million South Africans? Is the government, why do they select on the 100? Who are those 100 that the government has obviously selected? Government's responsibility is not to the 100 black industrialists. Responsibility of government is to the 52 million South Africans. Let the government create an enabling environment for all of us. Any South African who wants to become an industrialist to really come out of the system. But when you have a government that wants to create what anybody would really call crony capitalism, a system like that will never work anywhere. It has never worked anywhere in the world, and South Africa is not going to be an exception. We can only really promote.
If you have 100 people like Herman Mashaba who inspires me, won't I look at Herman and say, wow, I want to be like Herman when I grow up, and then at another one and say, yes, these are my heroes.
Why don't you create 52 million? 100 is not going to be enough, and you run them on the basis of excluding other South Africans. So you're creating an environment that is not really conducive for this country's future. What you do as a government, create an environment for the 52 million South Africans to really be the players. Why only 100 out of 52 million? And who are those special 100 that are going to really be selected to really be part of this program? So if we're going to be running this country on the basis of discrimination, then we're going back to what apartheid, that basically means our government admired what apartheid was all about in terms of running our country on the basis of discrimination. How do you think the international world has to really view us as a country? That they helped us to fight a system of discrimination. Now, 21 years later, we are aggravating that situation again as a country.
Herman Mashaba, we're going to continue this conversation. After the break, we're going to ask Herman Mashaba what the future holds for him and what it holds for South Africa. Stay with us.